You know, when I come to a meeting like this, I try and suspend my thinking and focus on my feeling. And I want to say, what is the feeling I get? Of course, thinking goes with it. But I want to tell you that what you've done is inspire me and fill me with hope. And you know, we live in a country that you so much need hope. And so before I want to say something about Partners for Possibility, I want to say hope. Hope is the belief that things can get better. Yeah? And you have no right to believe that unless you do something about it. And Louise and her team and all the partners at these 3 schools and others, you're doing something to make things better. And therefore we can believe in a better tomorrow. I love some of the words that I believe in, that I heard. I don't only like Ons is warm. That's a good one. I'll take that with me. But also, thank you for reminding us that people are key, and that one has to realize that you can't do anything unless you have self-knowledge. And I also thank you that you celebrate the power of the human spirit. To me, that's very important. And that came across several of you. The notion, Colleen, about dignity, I love that. And I'll come back to that in a few minutes. And identity. You'll never believe how important teacher identity is. And voice of the community. Thank you, Andre, and thank you, Peter, for making things happen. That's what you said, huh? Things happen. And things happen because you're serious. You're not fooling around. That school hall didn't go up automatically. It took hard work. And in fact, some of the results that you produced, Andre, is because of hard work. People don't automatically top the results at the Cape Academy. And thank you for what you're doing. You all are making this a better country. I met Louise, I just want to say, as she said, about a decade ago. And I remember that day because we were at a conference in Durban. And it was a time that there was so much doom and gloom, as there is now, I guess. What's different? But the doom and gloom was very apparent. Now, you know, as South Africans, we have a tendency to always expect the worst. And actually, we see that as a target. Yeah, we work towards that. And at that meeting, I was looking for people who can help me understand that we are a nation on the rise. That's what I listened to. There are enough people that tell me we are a nation that's going down. Personally, I don't believe that. And so Louise said the following. She said, and that really struck a chord with me. She said, we have many challenges in South Africa, but we are also a country that is alive with possibility. And so we choose, she says, we can choose to focus on the problems, and we will see lots of those all around us, or we can focus on the possibility and look for examples of the future we are committed to and look out for them. And finally she said, South Africa is alive with possibility, where every child has a chance to live a dignified life. And I said, well, that's really what I like to hear. That's why I stood up and applauded it, because I really believe in that. And since then, we've kept in touch with each other. So why do I love Partners for Possibility? I'll give you a few reasons. It's a model of a program that lives out its commitment to make South Africa a winning nation. Yeah. So firstly, it has to do with nation building. It's not just about schools. It's got to do with nation building. Now, here are leaders from education and business crossing traditional boundaries. We've heard examples of that, to co-create a better future for our children. Now, I believe if you want to change this country, you cannot ignore the 12.5 million young South Africans at schools and who are being educated across 25,000 sites with a manager or a leader at each of those sites. 12.5 million is a quarter of this population. There's no other sector that can claim that kind of influence. I really strongly believe in the power of education. In particular, what we've heard tonight is the role of leadership within those 25,000 schools. You know, we've heard about the role the principals play in influencing the community to follow their vision. But equally important is influencing the communities, what Louise would say, to face its problems and live into its opportunities and find the points of connection. Now, we know that there's a direct link between leadership and education. I worked for a little while in setting up NIDU, basically it's the inspectorate, and I had the opportunity to visit many schools in all the provinces with my friend who was the MEC, Brian. I really think I really thought that was true, and I would have welcomed that. Brian is a person for whom I have the highest regard, so good luck, Brian, as your next step. But I want to say that I went with Yusuf Gabru, who's a real tough guy. But Yusuf and I went to many schools, the Northern Cape, Free State, and I can attest to the importance of the school leader. I can give you data. You change the leader, you change the principal, the school either goes up or down. Principal plays a key role in the development of the school. And you know, it's very hard to work with 12.5 million people, but we've got 25,000 principals that we can work with. And Partners for Possibility is one of the initiatives to strengthen leadership capacity at scale. It has that possibility. And the only thing we have a need of is partnerships. Now, I just want to say a third thing for me that Partners for Possibility does. It's strengthening the fabric of South African society. As I returned, and Melanie was mentioning that, I was away living in another part of the world. And so at the end of 1990, I came back. And I made a deliberate choice. So, and that choice was, I wanted to be part of a university, but I also wanted to be part of the community. So I was at the University of Natal then, and so I worked on what I call the boundary, where the university meets the community. And my intention was to break down that solid wall between the university and the community, to make it porous so that innovation can flow in and out into the community and into the university. I went one step further, and that is after my stint at the University of Natal, which was 15 years, in addition to the 10 years I was away, I came back to the place where I grew up, and I bought over the house where I grew up from my mother, and so I live there for the last 13 years. And every morning, and I want to say I'm very happy living there. My car's not always that happy. But living in the community, this is the point. I'm not trying to be noble about that. Living in a community helps one to reclaim your humility. And that's what we heard from all the people here tonight. Because one realizes that there are different ways of knowing. And more importantly, I see living where I live and waking up, I see poverty on a daily basis. And, you know, I have developed a nice academic definition of poverty. And the definition that I adopted is that poverty is the inability to participate in society with dignity. Yeah. So that's what poverty is. But you know, that's an academic definition. That's not my lived experience. And as the English writer Chesterton said, when by experts in poverty, I do not mean sociologists, but I mean poor people. They are the experts, they live that. And that's why I need to be in touch with the people, because my understanding is very different to theirs. I would not be the same person if I did not come to understand that the knowledge in the community, as important as it is important, but not sufficient to change the world. And so I've been working with universities, and I've working with NGOs. I work with several NGOs. But I just want to say this, that when we talk about community, we have to be careful how we speak about community and how we describe local communities. We just have to think about that. You see, it's easy to label and define communities by their problems. So we begin to talk about communities as being gang infested and drug infested. And that's how we describe them and how we define them. But the communities where these schools are beacons of hope. And why? Because when you use these terms, it serves to reinforce negative perceptions of the communities, while at the same time making many of the beautiful stories that we heard tonight, making that invisible and masking that. Now, please understand me that those stories must be heard, and also the tragic stories of drug abuse and gang violence together must be heard. But when I think about Manenberg, and where I live is right next door to Hanover Park, and at the back, this other side is Q-Town. So I hear those gunshots that you talk about. It doesn't come right into my street, but I'm close to it. And those tragic stories, as well as the good stories, are what Partners for Possibility is about. Let me just say a few more things and then I'll stop. Our schools are in the first place called upon to understand our past as well as our current reality. And I want to quote from the White Paper on Education. It says, "When all South Africans won equal citizenship, their past was not erased. The complex legacies, good as well as bad, live on in the present. Difficult as it may be to do so, South Africans need to understand each other's history, each other's culture," and thank you, Stan, for highlighting that, "and each other's values and aspirations. And we shouldn't turn away from them if we are to make the best of our common future." End of quote. The Partners for Possibility provides that a safety net for that to happen. It's a program where differences are looked for and celebrated as good news, as opportunities for learning. So let me just say, in my view, Partners for Possibility attracts people like Louise, like Selwyn, like Paul, like others in Joburg, who make a difference in the world. And in schools, they make difference also in communities, because it's people that have a deep appreciation for the power of knowledge in the community and the powers of the community. And that's those of you that studied community development, that's called the ABCD, asset-based community development. It's all about engagement with the question, what does the community already know? And all these business leaders pointed that out, that when they got to the school, they did not come with lofty ideas. They wanted to know, what does the school already know? And this should be the starting point if we believe that the academy exists to serve the community and not the other way around. Yeah, so in closing, Partners for Possibility encourages business leaders to leave the comfort of their corporate offices and air-conditioned offices and to go and spend time in under-resourced communities so that they can discover that those powerful ideas that work in one context doesn't necessarily work in another. So that learning is an attempt to embrace the total reality of this country. And so there's a lot of cross-fertilization. The National Commission, you know, about that in 2011, pointed out 4 things as necessary in this country. One is active citizenship. Another one is leadership. Another one is cross-sector collaboration. And the other one is a capable state. And the Partners for Possibility is designed to achieve all of these things. And as we've heard from the speakers this evening, it is working in communities all around South Africa. And we've seen some examples of that tonight. You know, the ultimate objective of Partners of Possibility is to place the school at the center of the community. And citizens mobilize to support educators and learners at school. And I'm sure Brian will remind us that the government cannot do it all by itself. We need partnerships. And I just want to say 2 things, and then I stop. The one is that we all have a dream. And some of us die with our dream. It's important to have a dream, but it's not sufficient. You have to find a way to empower your dream. And the only way to empower your dream is to work in partnership with others that share your dream. And that is what we saw tonight. That people sharing a dream. And I thank the business leaders, I thank the principals, I thank PFP for making that possible. That empowering of a dream. And so the choice we have is outlined in the Dino King scenarios. You remember that? So as civil society and as government, we have three choices. And I became extremely worried when I went to visit businesses, particularly in KwaZulu-Natal. And they tell me, you guys, you're working with the public sector, we're not interested. Our children don't go there. So you try and sort out that problem. And I call that walking apart. That's what the Dinner King, that's scenario one. And if that's what we believe, it can only lead to disaster. Yeah. So the other possibility is walking behind. Now, Brian is a good man, I said that before, but I'm not going to spend my life walking behind him. Right? Because if that is the case, then all we see is a big finger saying, follow me. And we have no voice in that process. So walking apart is not good. Walking behind is not a possibility. So the only other possibility, and that's the hardest one, it sounds good, but it's the hardest one, is walking together. Partners for Possibility is all about walking together. Walking a business and community leaders, working together as business and the state. And that's a choice that we are faced with today. I always like to challenge people and say, so what is your preferred option? Walking apart? And that's based on the fallacy. And the fallacy is that it's leaking on your side of the boat, not on ours. Yeah? And if we all in this boat together, which we are, as a country, and it's leaking, that means we're all going to go down. So there's no point in saying it's leaking on your side of the boat. All of us must do what we can to scoop out the water so that we can get to the other side. And with God's help, we will. Thank you very much.